Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the Nordic platform for accelerated inner growth and empowerment. I'm Jannike, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'd love for you to subscribe. You do that right below, and then you get notifications of my interviews and video blogs. And today you are in for a treat. You're going to meet one of the most recognized Vedic astrologers in the world, Joni Patry. Joni is the founder of the Galactic Center, the University of Vedic Astrology. She gives private consultations. She has written many books, and 3 during this COVID-19 period that we find ourselves in. And she has a YouTube channel with over 83,000 subscribers. And today we're going to dive into actually how the planets and the stars and their alignments may explain what we have seen in 2020 and also what we can expect in 2021. Hi, Joni. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. I'm excited.
I am excited too, because I recently discovered you on YouTube. I was actually searching for astrologers because in January 2020, I had an inner crisis where I was in a big launch and an event, and I felt that everything was chaotic inside. And I felt this is something outside my control. And then I talked to a lot of people, and I looked online, and I realized there was like a Saturn and Pluto conjunction at that time. And I think I was actually being that sensitive that I experienced noticing that something was happening, sort of preparing me. And then the corona came and 2020 happened. So after that, I got really interested and curious about astrology. So what I understand, you have sort of foreseen that 2020 was going to be a disaster, and many other astrologers have also been talking about that. So we're going to dive into it. But before we do, for those who are a bit new to astrology, why do you think astrology is so helpful? How can that help us in our lives to become more aware of Vedic astrology, especially?
Okay, well, Vedic astrology is actually from India, and it has some of the oldest references to astrology, and it goes back to the Vedas. And the reason why I used to do Western astrology for 20 years, but the reason why I shifted Vedic is because I felt like it was more predictive and more precise. It actually takes into account precession, which means the placements of the planets and the stars that I'm using is actually astronomically correct. Did you know that Western astrology is off by almost a full sign? And so when I just discovered that, I really made it my mission to understand and learn Vedic astrology, the astrology from India. And this astrology takes into account what we call the 27 nakshatras. Just as, you know, we use the 12 signs. Well, these are smaller portions of the zodiac, the nakshatras, and these divisions are 12 degrees, 13 degrees, 20 minutes to be exact. So each of these portions, there's 27 of them, their meanings are derived from the stars. And the stars are everything to astrology. They really do give meaning to the signs. So when I study astrology, and really the way that I got into this was really I wanted to become more predictive. And when I saw the predictive value of Vedic astrology, it really stuck with me. So looking at, just to get back to 2020, I had been predicting for a long time that this would be the year of something catastrophic happening. And I always know that things that happen are always happening for our highest good, and it's an evolvement spiritually. That's another reason why I got into Vedic astrology. It's more spiritual. It really goes to the core of talking about who we really are. And astrology is for us to basically see where the trends are going and prepare. So I have been preparing people for 2020 for a long time, because the reason and how I was able to predict what was going to be happening was certain nakshatras, whenever the eclipses, and the eclipses are one of the most powerful tools we have in astrology, because eclipses are where you come together with the sun and the moon. And the sun and the moon are so important in astrology. They really do deal with the duality here on Earth: male, female, night, day, mother, father. It's the sun and the moon. So when you have these luminaries come together with what we call Rahu and Ketu, and what Rahu is, it is the north node of the moon in Western astrology, and Ketu is the south node of the moon in Western astrology. But when these points come together with the sun and the moon, we have eclipses. And for these eclipses to start occurring in the same exact signs that they did in 2020, it takes 18 and a half years for these eclipses to occur in these certain nakshatras that always bring something catastrophic. I went back. Well, let me explain something first. It takes 18 and a half years, remember, to go through all 12 signs. Therefore, within the sign of Gemini and within the sign of Sagittarius are these nakshatras that always cause something to happen like this. And let me explain also that Rahu and Ketu, the north and south node of the moon, are always exactly opposite. So they came together in the signs of opposition, Gemini and Sagittarius. But the nakshatras that they're in, these nakshatras are so rich with meaning because they take into account the meanings of the stars. And whenever Rahu is in the nakshatra Ardra, and Ketu is in the nakshatra Mula, there's always a huge catastrophic event. So going back 18 and a half years ago, when the last time they were in this nakshatra that it did reach in the year of 2020, again, 18 and a half years ago was the year of 2001. We all know what happened at 9/11. Then we go back 18 and a half years ago prior to that. And then we have around 1982, that's when the AIDS virus hit. Then we go back 18 and a half years ago from that, and we had the assassination of President Kennedy. Then we go back 18 and a half years ago from that, and we had the bombing of Hiroshima. So I kept going back, and then there was something really significant in January of 2020. It was where the nodes lined up, excuse me, Rahu and Ketu in these nakshatras, but Ketu was exactly conjunct Jupiter. And as an astrologer, we always go back to the very last time that something happened to see what happened before. You have to do your research. So the very last time that Ketu in these nakshatras that were critical lined up with Jupiter, it was the year of 1889, the very last time. And I said it was going to be a spiritual revolution. Lots of spirituality coming out, because in 1889, we actually there was this discovery of electromagnetic energy, which dealt with so many discoveries that we use today. Plus, there was a pandemic then. Now, remember, this is 1889. We have Rahu in Ardra and Ketu in Mula again. And so many things happened. It was actually the spiritualist revolution where Madame Blavatsky came up with the Theosophical Society. It was also when the Unity Church started. And Emerson and Thoreau, their writings were permeating everywhere in the world and changing consciousness. So here's what I say, something very positive with discoveries and a change of consciousness is going to come out of 2020. We just can't see it right now. And like I always say, hindsight is 2020. When we leave this year and look back, we will have a better understanding of what everything is about and why we had to go through this, because everything happens for a reason. But these are epic times, and I see even more happening throughout the coming years, but I also see a healing. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, so fascinating. I'm just so fascinated by your knowledge there. It's so rich. Some people have been saying that, maybe the big shift didn't happen in 2012, but the big shift is happening right now. What do you think about that? Do you think the Mayan calendar was sort of wrong talking about 2012?
Well, no, I think definitely that year many things happened. It just wasn't so outwardly obvious, but what's also happening that's symbolic, because you remember they said it was December 21st, 2012 that it was going to happen. Well, December 21st is another powerful day this year, because on that day, Jupiter and Saturn will exactly conjunct. And not only will they be conjunct, but there's going to be an occultation. And what I mean by that is they exactly line up together. Sometime at conjunction, they won't line up exactly together. So with this one, they say, look at the night sky, if it's clear, and they will look like one. And this is because they're lined up actually in declination. So the longitude and the latitude, they are aligned. And Jupiter and Saturn, they deal with society. They deal with the world. They even deal with money, economy, stock market, but it deals with the social aspect of human beings. And I think it's significant. It's also on the solstice day. So I do think that 2020 is this huge turning point in humanity. And there's no surprise that so much is happening in the United States, because Pluto has come back to the sign of Capricorn. Pluto takes about 244 years to go through the entire zodiac. And that was when the Declaration of Independence was signed 244 years ago. So there is actually a Pluto return for the United States, the chart that we use for the beginning of the United States. Which, what is Pluto? Pluto is life-changing. I mean, it's not just a little change. It's like everything as we know it will change. And I think it's so reflective of what's going on with the presidential elections. It's not going to be that just something shifts over to a certain party and things continue on. No. Everything as we know it will change. And of course, this is going to reverberate throughout the entire world. And you can see things are going on in every country. It's not just here. So the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is monumental. And the Pluto coming together with Jupiter and with Saturn, all in the sign of Capricorn. So remember, I'm using the sidereal zodiac, which falls back almost a full sign from Western astrology. And Capricorn is about government. And so this is how we run our governments, how we come together as a collective, as people, is going to go through the biggest change we have ever seen in a lifetime. That, mark my words.
Wow. I'd love to hear more about what sort of change, but we'll get back to that. Yes, I've also heard that Pluto symbolizes or stands for actually death and transformation. And I've been looking at, or even called this year, the dark night of the soul for the planet. Because something needs to die in order for something new to come. And that's what I experienced in January. Something was like, I was shedding, letting go or something,
Right.
like open up to something new.
Right. You're exactly right. As a matter of fact, over the lockdown, because I usually travel a lot, like every other month I go on a big trip. I haven't been able to travel. I actually wrote 3 books. I call it my trilogy. One is on Neptune, one is on Uranus, and one is on Pluto. And the reason why I was called to do that is because in Vedic astrology, they don't use the outer planets, but I know they work. So I call this a neo-Vedic approach where I teach how to incorporate the outer planets in the Vedic chart, because the outer planets are really the collective unconscious. They rule the masses and they rule generations because they stay in a sign for so long. So certain generations have the outer planets in certain signs, which really does flavor their whole generation and what's happening globally in the world. So that's how I incorporate them. They're extremely psychological. And going back to Pluto, here's what I say about Pluto. It is gut-wrenching. It is transformational. You feel like you're dying when you go through a Pluto transit. It's like the dark night of the soul. You're so right. But Pluto is always transformative. It forces us to let go of anything that is not growth producing. And we want to hold on to those things more than anything in the world. We think we need them. But always with a Pluto transit, 2 years later, you look back and you go, oh my God, I am so glad that happened, because I couldn't be who I am or where I am unless I was forced to let go of what it was that I was so attached to. So Pluto is this transformational planet that changes us. It's not always physical death, but it is an emotional death, and we change and we grow. So even though it's gut-wrenching and it feels terrible, it always brings us to a better place. Now, I can't say that so much with Neptune, but I can say that definitely with Pluto.
And many astrologers talk about that we're in this age of Pisces moving into the age of Aquarius. Can you explain for those who are a bit new to it, what does it mean that we're in age of Pisces? And I understand that this has lasted for a couple of thousand years, so it's a big deal. And what sort of does it symbolize, the age of Pisces? What does it mean for us? And then moving into the age of Aquarius. I realize there are a lot of questions at the same time here, but I'm curious if we're actually moving into the age of Aquarius right now.
Yeah. Well, Vedic astrology takes this into account in a huge way, because we are considered in the age of Pisces. When you talk about the ages, this takes into account precession of the equinoxes, which is what makes Vedic astrology different than Western astrology, because we take this into account in our readings. So the beginning of our zodiac in Vedic astrology is actually in Pisces, because the stars have shifted backwards over time and they continue to shift. So where the stars are moving to is relative as the planets circle throughout the constellations, which I look at the stars as sort of like the backdrop. When the planets transit throughout these different signs, this is the zodiac that I use with Vedic astrology. It is astronomically correct. So if you take your phone out at night and you hold it up to the sky, when you have those sky watch, it will be the placements that I'm using. But Western astrology is off, because Western astrology uses 0 degrees of Aries and never changes the beginning of the zodiac, whereas it's starting to separate with Vedic astrology because the stars are moving and we take this into account. As a matter of fact, with precession, it moves 1 degree backwards in the zodiac every 72 years. So by the time it goes through all 12 signs of the zodiac, it will be 26,000 years. So, but right now, what I'm trying to explain is because it's moved back from 0 Aries, then it started into 29 Pisces, 28 Pisces. And right now, according to precession, we're at around 6 degrees of Pisces in the zodiac, and that's our starting position. So if you consider going into the age of Aquarius from 6 degrees of Pisces, it means that according to precession, the stars will move backwards those 6 degrees, and we will be in the sign of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius. And if you consider 1 degree every 72 years, we've got a long ways to go because it would be 72 times 6 till we reach into the age of Aquarius. And you know, what is that? 340 or something years before we are literally in the age of Aquarius. But we're getting so close that we're starting to feel it and see the remnants of it. But according to the zodiac I work with, a lot of people are trying to say we're in the age of Aquarius. But astronomically, that is not correct. And but the age of Pisces is what that means to me. 2,000 years ago, what happened? There was the big onset of Christianity, and all the churches were built all over Europe, and synagogues and temples. Pisces is the sign of beliefs, of spirituality and what we believe in. But when we go into the age of Aquarius, I always say that Pisces is I believe, which is very important because that's what we base our security on, the spirituality and our beliefs. But when we get to the age of Aquarius, the saying for Aquarius is I know. And that will bring in a knowingness, not just that you base everything on belief, we will know. And that is an evolvement into a much higher degree of consciousness that's coming about. But obviously, we're not there yet. You can tell by the way, the consciousness and what's going on in the world. We don't know yet. We have to base things on what we believe. And that's the age of Pisces.
Fascinating. So let's move a bit over to 2021. So obviously, we have something going on the 21st of December. Moving into January, I think a lot of people are wondering about the presidency and what's going to happen. How do you interpret the outcome of this?
Okay, well, the first thing that I look at is eclipses, right? And there's an eclipse that happens in a few days that is monumental. Let me just say, it seems like I'm always saying this, but this eclipse is even more extreme than the one that we had last year that occurred. It occurred at the end of the year and the beginning of January, the end of the year. But this one is even worse. This one, I don't mean worse, probably better is what I mean. But this one happens December 14th. And when I look at this eclipse, it is so telling on what is going to happen. And one thing for sure, whatever you think is going to happen, it's going to be different. And what it's really telling me is that the eclipse happens, and I'm talking sidereal Vedic astrology, it happens at 28, 29 degrees of Scorpio. And Scorpio, much like the planet Pluto, deals with deep change and transformation. Now, in Vedic astrology, whenever we have planets at the last degree of a water sign. We call this Gandanta. It's actually the very last 2 degrees of water and the first degrees of fire. But water, I was always taught by my teacher, it represented something in the effect of drowning. Drowning. And that means losing control. Sometimes it actually does deal with floods and storms, but much of that can be floods and storms emotionally with the mass consciousness around the world. So the eclipse is Gandanta, transiting Mars, which was retrograde and went direct November 14th, but it's been traveling very slow. It's going to be Gandanta too in Pisces, around 29 degrees of Pisces. Another indication of things being completely and totally out of control. Another thing I see is at this eclipse, Neptune is at the midpoint of Rahu and Ketu, which form the eclipses, remember. They're going to be around 25 degrees of Scorpio Taurus. The sun and the moon, which is the new moon that determines the eclipse, will be 28, 29 degrees of Scorpio. So Neptune is at the midpoint of the nodal axes, Rahu and Ketu. And this means deception, deceit, denial, things that we didn't know, secrets and scandals are about to come out that we didn't know. Excuse me. Huh. And here's the most important thing. I mean, there's many things about this eclipse, but this is what's so important. Whenever we have eclipses, they always bring out something. And remember, we have a solar eclipse twice a year. So twice a year, they bring out something we didn't know about, because eclipses are the darkening of the light of the sun and the moon. So something comes out of the darkness. And with Neptune at the midpoint, it will be surprising what comes out of the darkness about something of scandals, secrets, and deceptions. That's actually the name of my Neptune book. But
like the 14th, it will happen, or will it happen around that time?
That's what I want everyone to understand. On the 14th, it starts. Well, it's around, because we already had a lunar eclipse 2 weeks before. And lunar eclipses are before or after the solar eclipse, because it's during a full moon. 2 weeks after, when you have the new moon, is the solar eclipse. So this will really flavor the entire year till we have another solar eclipse in June of 2021. That's why I'm talking about the eclipse that's happening in 2020, but it really sets the tone for the entire year of 2021. And here's another very important thing about this eclipse. K2, which is the south node of the moon at 25 degrees of Scorpio, will be exactly conjunct Mercury, 25 degrees of Scorpio. What is Mercury? Mercury is communications, mass communications around the world, how we connect, internet, anything like that. Internet, emails, computers, television, everything that connects us, even travel. So Mercury being with K2, K2 is actually considered losses where Rahu is gains. So there's a loss that occurs around how communications are distributed or monitored or even censored around the world. So there's this big upsurge of changing with the way that we communicate and the things that we discover, because we're going to discover there's been a lot of deception. And I'm not taking political sides. This can be on both sides. All I know is the stars are telling me something huge is being revealed about media, communications. And Neptune actually rules disease too. So there can be some things come out about what this whole coronavirus was truly about. The truth will come out. And so many times people, well, we're in the age of Pisces. People are going to believe what they want. With facts, they still are going to believe whatever they want, because we're in the age of Pisces, right? So people will believe what their whole past heritage has connected them, what they're about. That's where their beliefs will go. And
could
this
it
is
also be like a revelation of, disclosure for extraterrestrials? I just had
absolutely, absolutely. I say that in a lot of my videos. And as a matter of fact, in my Pluto book, people probably think I'm crazy, but I believe totally in omens and signs, right? And when I was writing my Pluto book, I go into a lot of detail about extraterrestrials and what that's all about, and how all of our governments have been in connection with them. It's all been a cover-up, but this is all going to come out. You're absolutely right. But here's where the omen happened. I was writing my chapter on the extraterrestrials in Pluto, and that takes a lot of guts to do it, because people say you're crazy, right? And I'm not kidding you. For the longest time, when I was on that chapter, a helicopter hovered over my house. And that's crazy enough, but I think it was an omen, pretty much telling me, you know what, you're right on. This is a fact. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's going too far out there. A
lot of strange things that starts to happen when you start to dig down that rabbit hole.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exciting. All right. So, okay, let's take January and the president. Will we see, or after from your perspective, will we see Biden continue as the president?
Okay. Well, I have been asked that so many times, and I'm always afraid to say anything, because people will like you or dislike you, because everything's so polarized right now. And I want to really, believe it or not, I really want to be unbiased, because I want to be able to see the truth. And if you're biased, you'll never see the truth, right? So I've done some videos on my YouTube channel where I go, analyzing Biden's chart, analyzing Trump's chart. And it's a very, very, very hard election to figure out, because there are definite things in Biden's chart that says he will get in, but there's definite things in Trump's chart that say he will get in. So
maybe it's not decided. We have free will, right?
Right. Yeah, you're so right. So you're so right. And so I've been vacillating back and forth, and I get criticized all the time. Well, you said this one time and now you're saying the other, because I'm not clear on it. But I will say this. When I truly analyzed it down and went back and forth, and 1 minute I said Biden, 1 minute I said Trump, in the end, there is something so powerful about Trump's chart that I don't know if he doesn't get in, he will somehow form his own country, or something's going to split. That's where I was thinking possibly the whole country is going to change so dramatically, because you got to consider this. Half of the country wanted one guy and the other half the other. So that's going to be this big divide. And Trump's chart, let me just say this, between February 22nd and April 13th, this is when Mars will go into Taurus. And it's going to conjunct Rahu. That is monumental. Something huge is going to happen in the United States concerning Trump. If he's not in office, he's going to come into power in some way. Now, when I look at the inauguration chart, that's what we do as astrologers. We look at the chart for January 20th at noon. This is when the president is to begin his inauguration. I saw things in that chart that astounded me. And the first thing I'll come out and say is that Mars and Uranus are exactly conjunct at 12 degrees of Aries. in the first house of this chart. And Uranus and Mars represent sudden, unexpected changes that you can't foresee coming. And maybe this doesn't necessarily happen on that day. Maybe it does, but probably it won't. But it reflects the whole presidency of who comes into power. It's going to change and flip-flop. And I said on election day, and maybe this was just for election day, that whoever we think the president is not going to be the president. Okay, so that was because on election day, Mercury actually shifted from retrograde to direct. And whenever Mercury, which deals with communications, and remember, it deals with votes, because this is how we communicate. This is how we count our votes, Mercury. And when it goes retrograde or direct, it shifts. So on election day, we didn't know who the president was. It shifted, just like the last time that this astrological event happened, where Mercury changed directions, actually went from retrograde to direct in the year of 2000, on the day of elections. This happened again. And that's what happened with Gore and Bush. We thought it was one, and then it was the other. But going back to the inauguration chart, oh my God, this is just the most profound chart. When I looked at that, I also noticed that when I took it down to the divisional charts, all the things that we do in Vedic astrology, the divisional chart that reflected the outcome of the birth chart, the beginning chart, Mars and Uranus went to the 10th house. And you'll have to, this is complicated what we do with Vedic astrology, but trust me, there's these divisional charts. It's called the D9 chart, the Navamsha. In that chart, that represents where the chart is going. And in that chart, Mars and Uranus were in the 10th house in Cancer, which Cancer is Mars' sign of debilitation. So it's a problem right there, but it means a radical shift with who's in office. But then the ruler of Cancer, the moon, goes to the 8th house with Neptune. So this indicates all of scandals and secrets coming out. So in the long run, even though we're going to go through these crazy times, we're going to see things come out about politics, about governments, about aliens, about things that we never dreamed we'd see in a lifetime will be exposed, and it's all for healing. And here's my prayer, really every day. May the truth come out that heals the world. And I'm not even telling you what it is, because I'm not sure, but we will see. And this is going to heal the world, not just in the United States. This is reflective of every country and leader in the world. And I do know that something big with aliens will be associated with this. Can you handle that?
I can handle it. I'm so ready for it. I thought it was going to be disclosure many years ago, and then I sort of gave up because I was like, why doesn't it happen? And I just let it go. I'm like, okay,
you know what I think
when it happens.
You know what I think? I think that Trump, as unpredictable as he is, he's going to be the one that reveals it. That's what I think. And maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like he's the only president that and if he's not in office, he'll say, look, this is what I discovered. And you know what? Everyone will say he's crazy.
We'll see. All right. So moving over to a bit about, us people dealing with Corona and the economy. And I just feel for so many people, not only who are sick, but also who are losing their jobs and their jobs that has been a life work for them. Will it get better when it comes to the virus? Will it calm down, or will it continue for a while until it gets better? And I'm curious about, the timing here, like how long do we have to have this lockdown and deal with this?
I know. Well, I have noticed that whenever Mars is always the triggering planet. Whenever it went into Virgo, I did extensive research on this. Whenever it went into Virgo, we had breakouts of disease and problems. As a matter of fact, I noticed that the 1918 pandemic, Mars had stationed, in other words, went retrograde in the sign of Virgo. And also it did the same thing when the AIDS virus came out. It went retrograde in Virgo. Mars has this beautiful cycle. It will go retrograde every 2 years. But by the time it comes back to a particular sign, it takes about 16 to 17 years for it to return to a particular sign that it was in retrograde before. So I went back in and calculated all this. And then, this was a while back, I knew it was going to go retrograde in Virgo. And I made this big valiant prediction, we're going to have a pandemic. And what happened was the Ebola virus hit. And I predicted it before it came out, based on this astrological cycle. And so this time I saw Mars go through Virgo. This was, and you can go back and look at my YouTube channel in, I believe it was September, October of 2019. And I said, everyone needs to really be careful of their immune systems. Start beefing up your immune system because something's coming. And then, of course, the coronavirus hit. But here's what I somewhat forgot. And that is, whenever Mars is in an opposing sign, it fully aspects that sign. So Pisces is the opposing sign to Virgo. And when Mars went into Pisces, which was somewhere around September, and it's still in Pisces, it will be in Pisces till December 24th. It has brought this revival of the coronavirus. I mean,
this year.
Yes. Yes. It's been, during the summer, it was kind of, and that's in the Northern Hemisphere. I know I have a lot of people in Australia that correct me when I say summer, but in the months of, June, July, August, it kind of was getting under control. And then all of a sudden we had the, October, November, all of a sudden we have these spikes again. Well, that's Mars being in Pisces, it went retrograde in Pisces, aspecting the Virgo sign. So that's where I know the spike started. But here's the great news. It's going to leave Pisces and go into Aries December 24th. And I think it's going to start getting under control. And I bet it's like something to do with the vaccine, whatever not cures, you know what I mean by remedies, things that will help us overcome this. We're going to start overcoming it as soon as Mars leaves this sign. Now, I'm not going to say that day, of course, December 24th, but it's going to start to subside. And I definitely think that by February and March, we'll be getting over this a lot. Because another thing I see is the stock market. Now, I could be wrong, but I think the stock market, and it's probably because of the vaccine, and not only that, in the United States, we'll have a stimulus come out by the first of the year. The stock market's going to go way up. And this is going to be between January and March, but then it's going to go down. So don't get too comfortable. And that's in the U.S. And I'm sure the U.S. stock market affects all the other stock markets, but I think we'll start to get back to normal starting definitely. Well, in 2021, we'll be over this.
But you're not talking about a crack. Well, you said it would go way up.
Well, here's what I think. I think something big is going to happen between February 22nd and April 13th. And that is going to cause the stock market to go down. I don't think, you know what? I don't think it's ever going to completely crash. And I could be wrong, but I know there's too much money out there. And the minute it goes down, all the billionaires start investing again. So that's why you're seeing all this cycle of highs and lows. I don't think it's going to come to a crash. But
will it be worse than it was now in March in 2020? Because that was pretty bad.
You mean that March 31st date?
Well, around March in 2020. Is it going to be that bad, or is it going to be?
You know what? I predicted that day it would crash that day. I did, and as a matter of fact, I'll share this with you. I told everyone, get into the stock market right now. As a matter of fact, I have a newsletter for people that want to get my newsletter. They can go
on it.
my website, and I make these predictions and send them to your email address. So my free newsletter, I went in and I said, look, the stock market is going to bounce back. If you want to get in the stock market, it's a great way to make money. And so I told my husband this. I said, we got to do it. I got to put everything where my mouth is, right? I'm telling people to do this. So we did. The very next day, it bounced back. And he thinks that he likes that prediction that I did more than any other prediction, I think. But this doesn't help a lot of people that have lost their jobs and, that have restaurants or in hospitality business or the airlines. I used to work for the airlines, and I know, what they're going through right now. But I know that the travel industry will make a comeback. And that's one of the stocks that I suggest people get into, because we're going to go back to traveling again. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready. And I cannot wait to start traveling again. Everyone's going to make up for lost time. The airlines are going to prosper. The hotels will come to life again. Slowly but surely, we'll get back to normal. It's not going to remain this way. It just isn't.
So we can actually look a bit forward to 2021. We can be a bit positive about it.
We can, absolutely. I believe, economically, but just everything to do with the divisions of emotions and governments, it's just going to be, like I said, out of control. People are out of control in their beliefs. So the one thing that I advocate so strongly, and I know you do too, is to stay rooted in your spirituality, to not get caught up in all of this mass pandemonium and fear-mongering, because everything happens for a divine reason. And we have to be connected within. And I believe everything out there is somewhat of a reflection of what's going on within us. So when we really connect or disconnect from all the chaos outwardly, and we connect to our divine inner knowing and the heart energy, which heals everything, that is the power of love, unconditional love. When we get connected with that, then it reflects a beautiful world. And that's how we can have an effect on this world and not get caught up with who's the president and all the hate and all of the all of this, we have to be, as I tell people, light workers. We have to be the leaders and not get caught up in the hatefulness of what all of this mass media is directing us to confuse us. So we have to get back to our reality and our truths, which is within our heart and soul, and reconnect with that. And as you do, this is how you're going to have a transformational effect on the planet, because what you have within you is reflected out there.
I couldn't agree more. That's what I focus on the most, is empowerment, because I think that's the clue when we look at how we can empower ourselves, like out of the victim thinking everything happens to me, but I create my own reality. That's when we actually start to change the world as well.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you the last question here before we wrap up soon. You also do private readings, and I'm curious about that natal chart. I don't know if it's called that, but how specific is it really? If I, went to you and got a reading, how specific is it, and how much do I also have does free will come into the picture?
Right. Well, here's what I believe. I believe your chart is a blueprint of everything you have been before. So it's like your karma. It's like, all of your past lives. I don't know about you, but I believe in past lives. I believe we've been here before, and it's a sum accumulation of what we're here to learn in this lifetime. And so if we look at our chart and truly want to learn from it, then we can see what we're here to correct and what we're here to go through, because it essentially gives us what we left undone in a past life. And so it's usually, I believe that our karma deals with relationships. We're here with the same families, we're here with the same people to heal the issues that we left undone. So many times people come to me and they said, oh, other astrologers said I have a terrible chart for relationships. And so they feel like they're doomed for the rest of their life with relationships. And I say, no. This is something that you came here to learn from in this lifetime. And once you learn it, then you don't have that karma anymore. You've healed it. So once you've healed it, then you can have beautiful, loving relationships that you want, because and if you don't heal it, this is one thing that gets people on the path really fast. I say, if you don't work on it and heal it, you're coming back in another life and you're going to have to do it all over again. So that usually gets people a little scared, like, oh my God, I've got to heal this. What is it I need to do? So the chart just really gives you what you're here to work on. And when you see that, then you can become free and you can evolve and grow. That's the most important thing astrology is here to teach us. Where can we grow? Where can we change ourselves? We are not just puppets. Things are not set in stone. We're here to understand what our lessons are, how we can overcome them, and how we can improve and make ourselves better. That's what I use astrology for, to empower people, to see what are your strengths, what are your talents, how can you go down that path and avoid the path of least resistance, where you can find your purpose, your meaning in life, and come from a place of joy and self-realization. That's what astrology should be used for. And yes, we have free will to change things, and that's why we want to know our charts.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This was highly interesting. You just got me so inspired to delve more into astrology in general. And I know you have your own university teaching others Vedic astrology,
yes,
so they can teach others again.
Yes. Let me just say something about my university. I feel like it is one of my greatest accomplishments in my life, except for my 3 sons. But my university is to empower others to learn Vedic astrology, just like it has empowered me. And we have it all built where there's 6 semesters. You watch videos, you take tests. But I also have it where you get your own tutor. And the tutors are people that have graduated from the university. They are aligned with you to answer questions, grade your tests, so you're not alone. There's 40 videos and tests that comprise 5 semesters. The 6th semester, you work with me individually. I'm going to give you charts, and I'm going to say, from this chart, tell me when this person got married. And
Wow.
I'll give another chart. Tell me when what this person's career should be, and when did the opportunity come? And another chart is, when did this person come into money and how? So all the things that I believe an astrologer gets asked, I make sure all of my students are able to do these type of charts. And then the final exam is to do a real reading with someone, and we help and guide. But ultimately, with the university, it's called the University of Vedic Astrology, I empower my students to become writers and become astrologers, and they are starting their own platforms of teaching on the university. And I'm also delegating readings to them. So it's like a built-in powerhouse for people to become a professional astrologer with the help and guidance of all of my teachers. We also have live webinars every week with the university. So it's ongoing, it's self-paced, and anyone can join anytime. But even if life gets in the way, let's say you sign up for a semester and your life gets in the way and you can't do it, you can go back and take that semester years from now. And you can also participate in the webinars whenever you like, once you're part of that semester. So, and I have students all over the world. So it's a wonderful way to learn Vedic astrology if you're so interested.
It seems like you're really on your purpose. I speak a lot about soul's purpose, and it seems like you're so right on your purpose. I just love that.
You know, I've been doing astrology my entire life. I started 40 years ago. And, you know, I love to tell the story about how I got into it. I really think it was a real bizarre way that I got into it. I was a little girl, and I live in Dallas, Texas. And it was 1963, and President Kennedy was coming to Dallas. And I'll never forget the night before he came. Well, my mother loved Kennedy, and she took my sisters out of school to go meet him at the airport, which is so funny because in the old History Channel clips, when he walks down the steps at Love Field in Dallas, the first people he walked up to was my mother and sister. And you can see it on the old black and white clips. I was like astounded. I didn't know it till years later that I saw them. It was so heartwarming because my mother's, you know, been gone, and to see her in those clips with my sisters, it was just astounding. But getting back to how this affected me, I remember watching TV the night before he arrived, and this psychic astrologer came on TV. Some of you might know, her name was Jean Dixon. She was on television, and she warned him and begged him not to come to Dallas or he'd be assassinated. And the very next day, the unheard of happened. I mean, he was killed 30 minutes after my mother shook his hand. And it was devastating to all of us here. And I always wondered, how did that lady know that? And it really, my mother had all the astrology books around the house, and we were the same sun sign. So I started reading them as a kid. And by the time I went to college, I found a school and an astrology teacher that I studied under, and I've been doing astrology ever since. And it is life-changing. It truly is life-changing to better understand your purpose, your meaning while you're here. It transforms your life. So astrology is my tool for self-realization and transformation. And one more thing, when I really got into it, I did Western astrology, but then I read the autobiography of a yogi, which is a fabulous book by Paramahansa Yogananda. And he was talking about his teacher being a Vedic astrologer. I was like, what is that? I didn't know there was a different astrology. So that piqued my interest. And then when I heard Edgar Cayce in one of his trance medium sessions, he said, Western astrology is off by almost a full sign. That got me going. I thought, I've got to learn this. And I did.
So would you say that you also are a bit psychic, that when you interpret?
Well, you know what? I think the astrology opens up the psychic ability. And I always tell my students to use the glyphs because those symbols open up your intuition in your subconscious mind. But aside from opening that up, I'm real big with technique. So, you know, if you're not psychic and you do astrology, you can come up with these predictions without being psychic. But many astrologers are psychic. And I don't know if the astrology opens the psychic ability or people that are intuitive are drawn to astrology as well. I think it's a little bit of both.
Well, thank you so much for a thrilling conversation. This was really exciting, and I'd love to speak to you again. And now we are a bit prepared for what will happen, and hopefully I'll get this video with out before December 14th, where there's a big shift going on. Yeah. Thank you so much, and I'll leave the links below so you can check out Joni's work. Thank you so much, Joni, for showing up today and your work.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching, everybody, and much light from the US and Norway. Bye-bye.